The koala had lived through hot seasons before, heat waves that sent parrots panting, cicadas screaming, kangaroos turning their ears outward to release trapped warmth. Australian summers were harsh even in the best years, and koalas learned early how to endure them, climbing high into the canopy where breezes cooled the leaves, pressing themselves against the rough bark of eucalyptus trunks, drinking the moisture hidden within leaves with slow, careful bites. But this heat was wrong. As the koala clung to a brittle branch of his favourite eucalyptus tree, he waited for the familiar relief of evening air, the cooling drift that always crept along the canopy when the sun finally dipped behind the ridge. Instead, he felt nothing. No downward rush of cooler night wind, no rustling in the leaves, no change at all. The air hung heavy around him, thick and unmoving, as if the entire forest were trapped beneath a glass dome. He shifted his weight carefully, claws gripping the flaky bark. The tree felt unfamiliar, its trunk warmer than the air, its branches dry and rigid. Eucalyptus leaves normally swayed even in weak breezes, their long, narrow shapes designed to twist and glide with airflow. But today they hung stiff, pointing downward like exhausted hands. He pulled a leaf toward his mouth, chewing slowly. It tasted drier than usual. The oils inside were concentrated, intense, lacking the faint moisture that usually soothed his tongue. He paused, sniffing the air. No scent of nighttime coolness, no scent of damp earth rising from the soil, no stirrings from the underbrush. Even the insects were quiet. Too quiet. A group of cockatoos perched on a nearby branch, feathers puffed in discomfort. They shifted constantly, beaks opening slightly as they panted. One spread its wings, hoping for a breeze, but none came. The bird flapped once, then settled again, defeated by the thick stillness. Below, a wallaby moved slowly among the dried grass. It paused often, lifting its head toward the canopy as if listening for something, a signal the forest refused to give. Its ears twitched, but no cooling gust touched them. Eventually, the animal lowered its head and continued forward with a lethargic gait. The koala blinked, eyes heavy. He felt no desire to move. Movement meant heat. Movement meant losing moisture he could not spare, but the branch under him radiated warmth back into his body, as if the tree itself had absorbed the sun and refused to release it. Trees normally cooled as evening came. These trees did not. He climbed higher, trying to escape the stagnant air. Each step made the bark crumble slightly beneath his claws. The eucalyptus leaves whispered faintly as he brushed past them, but not because of wind, only from his weight shifting them. He settled in a nook of branches where he usually rested during hot hours, but today the nook felt suffocating. He opened his mouth slightly, letting heat escape. His chest rose and fell faster now. Koalas did not pant unless forced to. A strange whirring disturbed the silence. The koala turned his head slowly. Humans. A group of researchers in light-coloured shirts and hats were moving along the base of the ridge, carrying metal cases and poles topped with sensors. One lifted a device toward the canopy, another pointed at a thermometer. "It's not dropping," one woman said, shaking her head. "Not even by half a degree. The canopy air should cool by now." Her colleague checked another instrument. "Trees aren't releasing heat either. Leaf surface temperature is matching the trunk temperature." "That's impossible," the first replied. "Eucalyptus cools fast. They transpirate at dusk. They should be releasing moisture." The koala watched them with dark, glassy eyes. Transpiration. He didn't know the word, but he felt the absence deeply. Leaves should have been releasing vapor, moisture that cooled the canopy and helped koalas endure harsh days. But today, every leaf felt sealed. Dry, tense. Another scientist tapped at a small screen. Humidity inside the canopy hasn't changed since midday. Air is static, zero vertical movement. "A thermal cap?" someone asked. "Maybe, or something blocking the usual cooling cycle." Their voices drifted faintly across the brittle grass. The koala listened without comprehension, but with instinct. The humans were concerned, the forest was concerned, and his own body was reacting to something he had never felt before, heat that refused to leave. He rested his head against the branch. The bark burned his cheek. He pulled away sharply. The tree was hotter than his own fur. He reached one paw out and tapped the trunk. Heat radiated outward like stored summer fire, yet the sun had already dipped behind the hills. Shadows stretched across the ground. Night approached, but the forest still baked as though trapped in perpetual afternoon. A glider possum zipped clumsily between two trees, or tried to. It launched from a high branch, spreading its membrane wings wide, but instead of catching cool descending air, it dropped too fast, the heavy warmth offering no lift. It flailed its limbs, managed to latch onto a lower branch, and clung there, trembling. The koala shifted again, uneasy. Night animals depended on that cool air to glide. Predators depended on it to hunt. Herbivores depended on it to breathe and rest. Without it, the entire rhythm of the forest was thrown off balance. A gust of wind finally approached. He saw leaves flutter on a distant tree, but when the breeze reached his branch, it felt warm. Not evening warm, midday warm. As if the wind had travelled across heated rocks and refused to lose a single degree. The koala pressed himself against the trunk again, desperate for even the illusion of shade-cooled bark. But the tree's heat pulsed against him, forcing him to pull away. Far below, the scientists set up another device, a tall metal mast with a spinning sensor at the top. The blades turned lazily. One researcher frowned. "Even the wind's wrong," he said. "Warm air is stuck under the canopy, mixing horizontally instead of rising." The woman shook her head. "It's like the forest is sealed, like the air can't escape." The koala felt that seal too, a heavy weight pressing downward. Heat trapped close to the leaves, a sky refusing to take the warmth back. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again with effort. He needed cooler air. He needed the night to breathe, but the night would not cool the trees. He remained clinging to the brittle eucalyptus, his claws hooked into bark that should have been releasing moisture. His ears twitched faintly. His breath grew shallow. Somewhere deep in the forest, a kookaburra called, a thin, hoarse sound instead of its usual rolling laugh. Even the birds had lost their voices in the heavy air. The koala shifted once more and pressed his face to the leaves. Still warm, still dry, still unmoving. If the trees did not cool, if the air did not lift, if the forest remained sealed, then the koala, and every creature among the eucalyptus, would be trapped in a heat that refused to end even after the sun went down. Night arrived, but the heat remained. The koala had expected the darkness to bring relief. It always did. Even during the harshest summers, night fell like a blessing. Warm winds drifted upward and out of the canopy, cooler air settled around the trunks, and the forest finally exhaled. But now, as he clung to the eucalyptus trunk with trembling claws, the air felt heavier, thicker, more suffocating than it had during the day. It pressed against his fur like a damp blanket, but without any moisture to ease the burn. He shifted his weight and tried climbing down the tree, but even that small movement drained him. The bark, normally cool at night, radiated a dull, oppressive heat. When he pressed his cheek against it, hoping for the familiar comfort of tree-shade temperature, he recoiled immediately. The trunk felt like stone baked too long in the sun. He blinked slowly, head dipping. Koalas rarely drank water. Their bodies were built around the eucalyptus leaf, extracting moisture from every bite. But tonight his throat felt dry, unfamiliar, uncomfortable. He swallowed and felt nothing change. Below, the underbrush rustled weakly. A ringtail possum emerged, panting heavily, its flanks moving in shallow, rapid motions. It climbed the nearest shrub, paused halfway, then stopped entirely. Its small paws trembled. Under normal night conditions, it would leap easily to another branch, gliding effortlessly with the help of cool drafts. Tonight the heat pinned it down like a weight. The koala watched it slump against the branch, too exhausted to move. Somewhere to his left a faint thud, then another, fruit dropping prematurely from an ironbark tree. Eucalyptus rarely shed fruit at night. Something in the heat had disrupted their rhythm. Leaves above the koala's head curled inward, their tips drying into brittle spirals. The oils inside smelled sharper than usual, stronger, concentrated by lack of cooling. He reached for a leaf and chewed slowly. It broke apart like paper. His tongue burned from the intensity of the oils. He dropped the half-chewed leaf, unnerved. A distant sound rolled through the forest, not the call of an owl, nor the soft glide of a glider, but the metallic whine of machinery. The humans were still working. Their lights glowed faintly through the trees, casting long beams upward that hung motionless in the still air. The koala clung to his branch as the researchers' voices rose faintly, carried not by wind, but by oppressive stillness. Surface temperature still rising. Rising. After sunset. Trees are storing heat. They're not releasing it. Leaf vapor pressure is 0. They're not transpiring at all. I've never seen eucalyptus shut down like this. They're acting as if the air around them is hotter than themselves. What's causing the inversion? It's completely sealed. Sealed. The same word he had felt long before he heard it. The koala shifted again. His claws scraped the drying bark, sending small flakes drifting downward. Normally, cool evening breezes would carry the flakes away, but tonight they fell straight down, dropping like insects too tired to fly. The canopy remained unnervingly quiet. Cicadas did not scream. Flying foxes did not pass overhead. Even the frogs near the creek bed, frogs he often heard even from the treetops, stayed silent. He felt an instinctual fear tighten his muscles. Silence meant danger. Heat with no relief meant desperation. His body told him what generations of koalas before him had rarely needed to know. He needed water. Real water. Liquid water. Not leaf water. He began descending the tree. Each step burned his paws. The bark flaked beneath him. The branches sagged, lacking the usual nighttime stiffness. When he reached the lower trunk, the heat felt even stronger. The ground itself radiated warmth upward as if refusing to release the day's heat. He paused, panting, then crawled toward a nearby creek bed. It was dry. Not just dry, warm. The stones at the bottom of the creek held heat like metal left in fire. The koala sniffed desperately for even a drop of moisture. There was nothing. The air tasted stagnant, stuck. Even the faint traces of humidity that normally clung to low-lying areas had vanished. He stumbled over a patch of scorched leaves. A wallaby lay nearby, chest moving in rapid, shallow breaths. Its eyes opened briefly as he approached, but it did not rise. Heat exhaustion. Stillness had robbed even the night of its mercy. The koala looked toward the ridge where the researchers had camped. Their lights blinked through the trees. He could hear their voices clearly now, a sign of shallow, unmoving air. The forest's entire cooling cycle has shut down. Leaf temperatures are equal to ground temperatures. That shouldn't be possible. We're seeing heat stress in every species we've monitored. Koalas especially, they rely on nocturnal cooling. If this continues through the night, arboreal mammals won't make it through tomorrow. The koala did not know their words, but he sensed the urgency. The forest was in distress. Everything around him confirmed it. The drooping leaves, the panting animals, the thick, unmoving air, the oppressive warmth radiating from every surface like a slow-burning fire. He continued walking along the dry creek bed, hoping for some lingering moisture trapped in shadows. He found a low, dark patch beneath a fallen branch. He pressed his nose to it. Only dust. He lifted his head slowly and stared toward the forest, where branches sagged under heat they couldn't release. He had lived his entire life in these trees, trusting their shade, breathing their cool air at night, drinking their moisture. But tonight they offered none of it. He climbed a small incline and looked back at the forest canopy. It glowed faintly in the moonlight, but even the moonlight looked wrong. Blurred not by mist but by heat trapped under the branches, unable to rise. A faint crackling sound echoed behind him, leaves dropping prematurely, drying too fast. A kookaburra let out a hoarse, broken call. A brush-tail possum limped between trees, stopping often to pant. The koala clung to a low branch, exhausted. His chest rose too quickly. The heat pressed inward. The air would not cool. The trees would not breathe. The night refused to become night. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with effort. If the cooling did not return, if the forest stayed sealed, if the heat remained pinned to the canopy, then by sunrise, the eucalyptus grove he had known all his life would become too hot for any creature to hold on.